What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. So anyways, a few weeks ago I had an open house here at the studio. It was from 4 to 8. Since I've had the studio set up, I've shown in the last few videos kind of like my little museum, but also like the vibe of a store. I kind of decided I wanted to have people in here, and I only really promoted it through a couple Instagram stories and stuff like that. I didn't know, how big it would be, who would show up, or anything like that. So it had a few different like concepts. I had kind of like a flea market element, a bunch of stuff that was photography related, a bunch of stuff that is just accumulated here that wasn't, and then some t-shirts for sale. I put out some prints that I've made over the years that I haven't used for anything else, hung them up, had those for sale, had some like outtake stuff for sale real cheap. Then I put out Rick, who I bought the building from, the photographer who used to own it, a bunch of his posters and some of his cool stuff that is around, and just, the idea was so people had something to look at when they came over and hung out. So the mix of people who showed up was pretty good. I had some friends who just showed up to support, just hung out, had a beer, talked with each other, listened to music. I had some colleagues show up, I had some clients show up, some friends who are interested in photography, a couple photographers I've only met a few times came. So yeah, it was a really good like mix across the spectrum. Sales-wise, I sold a couple prints, a couple t-shirts, not really any of the flea market stuff, which is fine. One of the things, I think I would have had to lean into one of the concepts like that to make it really successful as like a sale type thing. Like if it was going to be the flea market, have that all weekend long and really promote that aspect. If I was really trying to sell prints, lean into a art show concept. So that wasn't really my concern anyways, though. I kind of, like I said, wanted people to be able to move around and there'd be stuff to look at and it'd be interesting. And if stuff moved, great. But the idea was I wanted to know what it felt like to have people in here. I was also thinking, is it going to, maybe the right person walks through the door who has an idea and wants to do something with this space, help out with this space, or it's also just promotion for my business in the studio and what it looks like. And in all reality, it also turned out just to be a really fun night. But one thing that did happen, which I was kind of hoping for, is that it would inspire me to end up doing something in a certain direction. So as much as I would love this to be a retail space, sell film photography stuff, anything related to that kind of thing, I've just decided I just know I don't want to keep retail hours, and I don't want to try and hire someone myself that would work the counter and be open a number of days a week. So the event idea is more what I've gone with, and I actually made some moves. I bought myself, it's not here yet, a large format camera with the setup to do wet plate collodion process. It's something I've always wanted to do. I know I'm not coming up with anything new here. This process has become popular, I don't know, a little over 10 years ago. I think it was really the Eastman House Museum. When they were doing workshops, a number of people got into it. And then if you do a YouTube search right now, it's grown. There's a lot of people doing alternative and historic processes. But the idea was, I've always wanted to do it anyways, but then if I could master the concept, the process, and all that, to have events here. So I showed this in the point and shoot video, but we did a cooking class with some friends, I don't know, a couple months ago, sometime over the winter. And it was really fun. We sat there, had a couple beers, learned how to cook something. And I was kind of thinking of that vibe for this space. So that night, the open house night, some of the friends hung out later and we just kind of sat in here having a couple beers, and I really liked it. I've just never really done that. And so I thought of that. I mean, I just think like that kind of event thing where it's like you could have some snacks, you could have some wine if you drink or whatever. And then we take turns doing the portraits, and with the wet plate process, it's really cool to watch. It's something that you can be involved in, and then you get to walk home, go home with an actual one-off print that has that super unique vintage look. So I'm thinking, trying to do that, and then you see if t-shirts sell. Do you want to make more designs? Do you want to have more stickers out? Do people buy extra stuff here? So maybe that could lead into something else. But it's just a way to start, a way for me to start using this space in a way I want to. I love teaching, and I'm a nerd of the history of photography. So, I'm thinking at the event, you do a little intro to the history of photography, but then you take each person and they get to go through the process and get their portrait made. I also have the advantage, like I've always said, is I already pay for the space. It's here. But besides buying the large format camera, and the setup I got comes with the stuff you need, the holders for like wet plates, drying racks, so a couple things that you need, and a couple of the, I'll go through the process when I get everything. I'll show the whole entire thing when it gets here before I even try and use it. But beyond that, I have all darkroom stuff here. and also a dark room. So let's talk about that. So I've shown this on the channel before. This used to be the dark room. You could see we've taken off the wall where the door was and everything. So it is definitely not a light, tight space or anything anymore. It is now more of a shop, wood shop and stuff. So yeah, used to have a light table here, enlargers here. There used to be a big sink here, but we still got this one. So what my thought process is just to try and black off this back half of the space so the front half can still be what it is. I actually just started going through some of my stuff. I've just poured some water in here because a lot of this stuff down here is dirty. It just sat down here for years. So, and I have even more stuff upstairs, but these are just some of the trays and some of the bottles I just pulled out this morning, kind of thinking about the concept and all that kind of stuff. So I'll get more. Obviously I have to order the stuff to actually make the wet plates, which is blackened aluminum, and then all the different chemicals. I'm starting to do the research. Lund Photographic is a place it seems like everyone gets these kind of supplies from. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think what I'll do is I'll do some test like party things with just, you know, some of my cycling friends, and so I could get a vibe. And this is all down the road. Once I've mastered the skill, decide I like the skill, decide I have the right gear to make this happen. But yeah, do some test parties, see how long things take, figure it out. Another plan for way down the road then would be to do it at events. You know, we have the art walks here. The art museum is always looking for stuff they could do for their members. And so just different kinds of things. And I was even thinking in the back of my head with all the bike events I go to, would this be something that people would want portraits of their bikes and you get to walk away with that really cool vintage style portrait. Like I mentioned, I will go through the whole camera and setup that I bought. I think we'll kind of do like a unboxing thing, but I definitely went like vintage style, their brass lenses and stuff. I didn't do a bunch of research. I found a guy on eBay who had a number of different kits kind of together for this kind of thing, and I just pulled the trigger on one. I'm like, I don't know enough about this. There's so much large format stuff from over the years. So I just totally winged it. And in the back of my mind, I'm kind of thinking, you know, say this just doesn't take with me. Say I'm not good at it, I don't like it. Don't think that'll be the case, but whatever. I don't think I would lose a ton of money selling the stuff back. Like I said, I didn't do the research to know if I got a great deal or anything like that, but even if I lost a couple $100, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So that's what I did. Something that's not like me personally. I usually do a lot of research. I know a lot about my photography stuff. And with this large format thing, I just kind of was like, I'll just buy this one. We'll see how it goes. eBay has 0% financing for 6 months. So that's another thing I did to help, you know, like lessen the cost for a while. So I'll pay it off over 6 months instead of just all up front. Edmund's real confused by this cedar I bought to make some more raised beds out back. He wouldn't walk on it. I had to put him there. So I already have a understanding of the process. I've just never actually done the hands-on. It's kind of like before I ever drove stick. I knew how a stick car was driven, a manual, but when you have to get out there and do it, it's a little bit different. The first time you stop at a red light on a hill, it's a little nerve-wracking. So I do think some of this process will be a little daunting, but I've always kind of taught myself everything in photography. I taught myself how to get into film photography. I retaught myself how to make prints. So I'm not completely out of my element. The other thing I'm really looking forward to is I've really fallen away from shooting a lot of film. And a lot of that is actually just the scanning process I'm not that into. And then also just the time over days. When I worked at the farm and my days were so long, I still loved shooting film. And I would get off work one night, I would get the film onto the reel, into the developing tank, and that was all the energy I had. The next day, I would do the development process, hang it up to dry. The third night, I would cut all the film, get it ready to scan. So I had to like break the process up because of my time. But even when you compress all that, it's just something I haven't been in the mood to do as much the last couple years, even though I love my film cameras and I love shooting film. So one thing that is super appealing to me about this process is everything is done all at once, and it has to be, because wet plate, like they say, think damp or moist plate, but everything has to be done before it dries. So we're talking like a 15-minute process to, you know, from taking the photo to having it developed and everything. You know, there's obviously some washing and drying and lacquering and all that stuff that we'll get into down the road, but this compressed process is really exciting to me. And the camera I bought is 5x7, so also even instead of just scanning these, I'll be set up if I have people over here, I'll just photograph them with my high resolution R5 until they could also have the digital file to take with them, not just the physical print picture. That's where I'm at right now. So going forward, my plan is to document the gear, document my learning process, and that's, whether it's failing or whether it's succeeding. I watched a video I'd watched years ago by Matt, oh man, drawing blank on his last name, but he's Chillicothe, he's an Ohio guy. And he went and did it with a friend for a day, and he was like, how long does it take to learn this process? And the guy was like, you could learn in like an afternoon. And then I was watching another video that I had never seen before of a guy in New York City, and he's like, it took me 6 months to master this. So no idea how it's going to go down, but either way, we'll take you along for the ride. Still might make some other content for this channel. There's some cameras I'd like to talk about that I think are really interesting that have been coming out lately, but I'm keeping this channel loose, like I said, because I don't want to put pressure on myself to have a deadline, and I don't want to end up just quitting. And my bike content channel just still is, when it comes to YouTube, that's where I'm going to focus my video energies, just because that channel is successful. And this one, we'll see what happens. And with this process, maybe it motivates me more to make even more content. We'll see. Anyways, thanks as always for watching. I'm a little excited about this idea. So yeah, I hope you get subscribed, follow along, give this video a like. See you in the next one. Peace.